Hey, it's Emil the Tired Queer back from the dead. Oh my gosh, I know. It's only taken 6 years, but I've finally sat back down to record the next couple chapters of Night World. Oh my gosh, give me a round of applause. Sorry, that was me. I have no I have no idea how to add like a applause soundtrack, so you just had to deal with my pity attempt. Lots changed, but nothing that you guys would ever really care about. So yeah, thank you for the 2 commenters on my last video. You guys are the best, and why I even started chapter 3. So let's get to it. Welcome to the Night World series. We're reading the first book, Secret Vampires, by L.J. Smith. All Poppy could think of was the pretty bald girl in the gift shop. Cancer. But they can do something about it, can't they? She said, and even to her own ears, she sounded very young. I mean, if they had to, they could take my pancreas out. Oh, sweetheart, of course. Poppy's mother took Poppy into her arms. I promise you, if there's something wrong, we'll do anything and everything to fix it. I'd go to the ends of the earth to make you well. You know that. And at this point, we aren't even sure that there is something wrong. Dr. Franklin said that it's extremely rare for teenagers to get a tumor in the pancreas. Extremely rare. So, let's not worry about things until we have to. Poppy felt herself relax. The pit was covered again. But somewhere near her core, she still felt cold. I have to call James. Her mother nodded. Just make it quick. Poppy kept her fingers crossed as she dialed James' apartment. Please be there. Please be there, she thought. And for once, he was. He answered laconically, but as soon as he heard her voice, he said, "What's wrong?" Nothing. Well, everything, maybe. Poppy heard herself give a wild sort of laugh. It wasn't exactly happy. What happened? James said sharply. Did you have a fight with Cliff? No, Cliff's at the office, and I'm going into the hospital. Why? They think I might have cancer. It was a tremendous relief to say it, a sort of emotional release. Poppy laughed again. Silence on the other end of the line. Hello? I'm here, James said. And then he said, I'm coming over. No, there's no point. I've got to leave in a minute. She waited for him to say that he'd come and see her in the hospital, but he didn't. James, would you do something for me? Would you find out whatever you can about cancer in the pancreas, just in case? Is that what they think you have? They don't know for sure. They're giving me some tests. I just hope they don't have to use any needles. Another laugh. But inside, she was reeling. She wished James would say something comforting. I'll see what I can find on the net. His voice was unemotional, almost expressionless. And then you can tell me later. And they'll probably let you call me at the hospital. Yeah. Okay, I have to go. My mom's waiting. Take care of yourself. Poppy hung up, feeling empty. Her mother was standing in the doorway. Come on, Poppet. Let's go. James sat very still, looking at the phone without seeing it. She was scared, and he couldn't help her. He'd never been very good at inspirational small talk. It wasn't, he thought grimly, in his nature. To give comfort, you have to have a comfortable view of the world. And James had seen too much of the world to have any illusions. He could deal with the cold facts, though. Pushing aside a pile of assorted clutter, he turned to his laptop and dialed up the internet. Within minutes, he was using Gopher to search National Cancer Institute's CancerNet. The first file he found was listed about pancreatic cancer _patient. He scanned it. Stuff about what a pancreas did, stages of the disease, treatments, nothing too gruesome. Then he went to pancreatic cancer _physician, a file meant for the doctors. The first line held him paralyzed. Cancer of the exocrine pancreas is rarely curable. His eyes skimmed down the lines. Overall survival rate, metastasis, poor response to chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and surgery. Pain. Pain. Poppy was brave, but facing constant pain would crush anyone, especially when the outlook for the future was so bleak. He looked at the top of the article again. Overall survival rate, less than 3%. If the cancer had spread, less than 1%. There must be more information. James went searching again and came up with several articles from newspapers and medical journals. They were even worse than the NCI file. The overwhelming majority of patients will die and die swiftly, experts say. Pancreatic cancer is usually inoperable, rapid, and debilitatingly painful. The average survival, if the cancer has spread, can be 3 weeks to 3 months. 3 weeks to 3 months? James stared at the laptop screen. His chest and throat felt tight. His vision was blurry. He tried to control it, telling himself that nothing was certain yet. Poppy was being tested. That didn't mean she had cancer. But the words rang hollow in his mind. He had known for some time there was something wrong with Poppy. Something was disturbed inside her. He had sensed the rhythm of her bodies were slightly off. He could tell she was losing sleep. And the pain. He had always known when the pain was there. He just hadn't realized how serious it was. Poppy knows, too, he thought. Deep down, she knows that something very bad is going on. Or she wouldn't have asked me to find this out. But what does she expect me to do? Walk in and tell her she's going to die in a few months? Am I supposed to stand around and watch it? His lips pulled back from his teeth slightly. Not a nice smile, more of a savage grimace. He'd seen a lot of death in 17 years. He knew the stage of the dying, knew the difference between the moment breathing stopped and the moment the brain turned off. He knew the unmistakable, ghost-like pallor of a fresh corpse, the way eyeballs flattened about 5 minutes after expiration. Now that wasn't a detail most people were familiar with. 5 minutes after you die, your eyes go flat and filmy gray, and then your body starts to shrink. You actually get smaller. Poppy was so small already. He'd always been afraid of hurting her. She looked so fragile, and he could hurt somebody much stronger if he wasn't careful. That was one of the reasons he kept a certain distance between them. One reason, not the main one. The other was something he couldn't put into words, not even to himself. It brought him right up to the edge of the forbidden, to face rules that had been ingrained in him since birth. None of the night people could fall in love with a human. The sentence for breaking the law was death. It didn't matter. He knew what he had to do now, where he had to go. Cold and precise, James logged off the net. He stood, picked up his glasses, slid them into place, went out into the merciless June sunlight, slamming his apartment door behind him. Poppy looked around the hospital room unhappily. There was nothing awful about it, except it was too cold. But it was a hospital. That was the truth behind the pretty pink and blue curtains and the closed-circuit TV and the dinner plates decorated with cartoon characters. It was a place you didn't come unless you were pretty darn sick. Oh, come on, Poppy told herself. Cheer up a little. What happened to the power of poppative thinking? Where's Poppyana when you need her? Mary Poppyans? God, I'm even making myself gag, she thought. But she found herself smiling faintly, with self-depreciating humor if nothing else. And the nurses were nice here. And the bed was extremely cool. It had a remote control on the side that bent into every imaginable position. Her mother came in while she was playing with it. I got a hold of Cliff. He'll be here later. Meanwhile, I think you better change so you're ready for the test. Poppy looked at the blue and white striped seersucker her hospital robes, and felt a painful spasm that seemed to reach from her stomach to her back. And something in the deepest part of her said, "Please, not yet. I'll never be ready." James pulled his Integra into the parking lot on Ferry Street near Stoneham. It wasn't the nicest part of town. Tourists visiting Los Angeles avoided this area. The buildings were sagging and decrepit. Several stores were vacant, with cardboard taped over the broken windows. Graffiti covered the peeling paint on cinder block walls. Even the smog seemed to hang thicker there. The air itself seemed yellow, cloying. Like a poisonous miasma, it darkened the brightest days and made everything look unreal and ominous. James walked around to the back of the building. There, among the freight entrances of the stores in the front, was one door unmarked by graffiti. The sign above it had no words, just a picture of a black flower, a black iris. James knocked. The door opened 2 inches, and a skinny kid in a wrinkled t-shirt peered out with beady eyes. "It's me, Ulf," James said, resisting the temptation to kick the door in. "Werewolves," he thought. "Why do they have to be so territorial?" The door opened just enough to let James in. The skinny kid glanced suspiciously outside before shutting it again. "Go mark a fire hydrant or something," James suggested over his shoulder. The place looked like a small cafe, a darkened room with little round tables crammed in a side-by-side, surrounded with wooden chairs. There were a few scattered people sitting down, all of them looking like teenagers. 2 guys were playing pool in the back. James went over to one of the round tables where a girl was sitting. He took off his sunglasses and sat down. "Hi, Giselle." The girl looked up. She had dark hair and blue eyes, slanted, mysterious eyes, which seemed to have been outlined in a black eyeliner, ancient Egyptian style. She looked like a witch, which was no coincidence. "James, I've missed you." "How's it going these days?" She cupped her hands around the unlit candle on the table and made a quick motion as if releasing a captive bird. As her hands moved away, the candle wick burst into flames. "Still as gorgeous as ever," she said, smiling at him in the dancing golden light. "That goes for you too. But the truth is, I'm here on business." She arched an eyebrow. "Aren't you always?" "This is different. I want to ask your professional opinion on something." She spread her slender hands, silver fingernails glowing in the candle flame. On her index was a ring with a black Delilah. "My powers are at your disposal. Is there someone you want cursed? Or maybe you want to attract good luck or prosperity? I know you can't need a love charm." "I want a spell to cure a disease. I don't know if it has to be a specific disease or if there's something more general would work. A general health spell." "James." She chuckled lazily and put a hand on his, stroking lightly. "You're really worked up, aren't you? I've never seen you like this." It was true. He was experiencing a major loss of control. He worked against it, disciplining himself into perfect stillness. "What particular disease are we talking about?" Giselle asked when he didn't speak again. "Cancer." Giselle threw back her head and laughed. "You're telling me your kind can get cancer? I don't believe it. Eat and breathe all you want, but don't try and convince me that the Lamia get human diseases." This was the hard part. James said quietly, "The person with the disease isn't my kind. She's not your kind either. She's human." Giselle's smile disappeared. Her voice was no longer husky or lazy as she said, "An outsider? Vermin? Are you crazy, James?" "She doesn't know anything about me or the night world. I don't want to break any laws. I just want her well." The slanted blue eyes were searching his face. "Are you sure you haven't broken the laws already?" And when James looked determined not to understand this, she added in a lower voice, "Are you sure you're not in love with her?" James made himself meet the probing gaze directly. He spoke softly and dangerously. Don't say that unless you want a fight. Giselle looked away. She played with her rings. The candle flame dwindled and died. James, I've known you for a long time, she said without looking up. I don't want to get you in trouble. I believe you when you say you haven't broken any laws. But I think we'd both better forget this conversation. Just walk out now, and I'll pretend it never happened. And the spell. There's no such thing. And if there was, I wouldn't help you. Just go. James went. There was one other possibility that he could think of. He drove to Brentwood, to an area that was as different from the last as a diamond is from coal. He parked in a covered carport by a quaint adobe building with a fountain. Red and purple bougainvillea climbed up the walls to Spanish tile on the roof. Walking through an archway into a courtyard, he came into an office with gold letters on the door. Jasper R. Rasmussen, Ph.D. His father was a psychologist. Before he could reach for the handle, the door opened and a woman came out. She was like most of his father's clients, 40-something, obviously rich, wearing a designer jogging suit and high-heeled sandals. She looked a little dazed and dreamy. There were 2 small, rapidly healing puncture wounds on her neck. James went into the office. There was a waiting room, but no receptionist. Strains of Mozart came in from the inner office. James knocked on the door. Dad? The door opened to reveal a handsome man with dark hair. He was wearing a perfectly tailored gray suit and a shirt with French cuffs. He had an aura of power and purpose, but not warmth. He said, "What is it, James?" in the same voice he used for his clients. Thoughtful, deliberate, and confident. "Do you have a minute?" His father glanced at his Rolex. "As a matter of fact, my next patient won't be here for half an hour. There's something I need to talk about." His father looked at him keenly, then gestured to an overstuffed chair. James eased into it, but found himself pulling forward to sit on the edge. "What's on your mind?" James searched for the right words. Everything depended on whether he could make his father understand. But what were the right words? At last, he settled for bluntness. "It's Poppy, and she's been sick for a while, and now they think she has cancer." Dr. Rasmussen looked surprised. "I'm sorry to hear that." But there was no sorrow in his voice. "And it's a bad cancer. It's incredibly painful and just about 100% incurable." "That's a pity." Again, there was nothing but mild surprise in his father's voice. And suddenly, James knew where that came from. It wasn't a surprise that Poppy was sick. It was a surprise that James had made a trip just to tell him this. "Dad, if she's got this cancer, she's dying. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" Dr. Rasmussen steepled his fingers and stared into the ruddy gloss of his mahogany desk. He spoke slow and steadily. "James, we've been through this before. You know, your mother and I are worried about you getting too close to Poppy, too attached to her." James felt a cold surge of rage. "Like I got too attached to Miss Emma?" His father didn't blink. "Something like that." James fought the pictures that wanted to form in his mind. He couldn't think of Miss Emma now. He needed to be detached. That was the only way to convince his father. "Dad, what I'm trying to say is I've known Poppy just about all my life. She's useful to me." "How?" "Not in the obvious way. You've never fed on her, have you?" James swallowed, feeling nauseated. Feed on Poppy? Use her like that? Even the thought of it made him sick. "Dad, she's my friend," he said, abandoning any pretense objectively. "I can't just watch her suffer. I can't. I have to do something about it." His father's face cleared. I see. James felt dizzy with astonished relief. You understand? James, at times one can't help a certain feeling of compassion for humans. In general, I wouldn't encourage it, but you have known Poppy for a long while. You feel pity for her suffering. If you want to make that suffering shorter, then yes, I understand. The relief crashed down around James. He stared at his father for a few seconds, and then softly said, Mercy killing? I thought the elders had just put a ban on deaths in this area. Just be reasonably discreet about it. As long as it seems to be natural, we'll all look the other way. There won't be any reason to call in the elders. There was a metallic taste in James' mouth. He stood and laughed shortly. Thanks, Dad. You've really helped a lot. His father didn't seem to hear the sarcasm. Glad to do it, James. By the way, how are things at the apartments? Fine, James said emptily. And at school? School's over, Dad, James said, and let himself out. In the courtyard, he leaned against the adobe wall and stared at the splashing water of the fountain. He was out of options, out of hope. The laws of Night World said so. If Poppy had the disease, she would die from it. Chapter 4. Poppy was staring without an appetite at a dinner tray of chicken nuggets and French fries when Dr. Franklin came in the room. The tests were over. The CAT scan had been alright if claustrophobic, but the ERCP had been awful. Poppy could still feel the ghost of the tube in her throat every time she swallowed. You're leaving all this great hospital food, Dr. Franklin said with a gentle humor. Poppy managed a smile for him. He went on talking about innocuous things. He didn't say anything about the test results, and Poppy had no idea when they were supposed to come in. She was suspicious of Dr. Franklin, though. Something about him. The gentle way he patted her foot under the blanket, or the shadows around his eyes. When he casually suggested that Poppy's mother might want to come for a little walk down the hall, Poppy's suspicions crystallized. He's going to tell her. He's got the results, but he doesn't want me to know. Her plan was made in the same instant. She yawned and said, Go on, Mom. I'm a little bit sleepy. And then she lay back and shut her eyes. As soon as they were gone, she got off the bed. She watched their retreating backs as they went down the hall into another doorway. Then, in her stocking feet, she quietly followed them. She was delayed for several minutes at the nursing station. Just stretching my legs, she said to the nurse, who looked inquiringly at her, and she pretended to be walking at random. When the nurse picked up a clipboard and went into one of the patients' rooms, Poppy had hurried down the corridor. The room at the end was a waiting room. She'd seen it earlier. It had a TV and a complete kitchen setup so relatives could hang out in comfort. The door was ajar, and Poppy approached it stealthily. She could hear the low rumble of Dr. Franklin's voice, but she couldn't hear what he was saying. Very cautiously, Poppy edged closer. She chanced one look around the door, and she saw at once there was no need for caution. Everyone in that room was completely occupied. Dr. Franklin was sitting on one of the couches. Besides him was an African-American woman with glasses on a chain around her neck. She was wearing the white coat of a doctor. On the other couch was Poppy's stepfather, Cliff. His normally perfect dark hair was slightly mussed. His rock-steady jaw was working. He had his arm around her mother. Her Dr. Franklin was talking to the both of them, his hand on her mother's shoulder. And Poppy's mother was sobbing. Poppy pulled back from the doorway. Oh my God, I've got it. She'd never seen her mother cry before. Not when Poppy's grandmother died, not during the divorce from Poppy's father. Her mother's specialty was coping with things. She was the best coper Poppy had ever known. But now, I've got it. I've definitely got it. So maybe it wasn't so bad. Her mom was shocked, okay? That was natural. But it didn't mean that Poppy was going to die or anything. Poppy had all of modern medicine on her side. She kept telling herself this as she edged away from the waiting room. But she didn't edge away fast enough. Before she got out of the earshot, she heard her mother's voice, raised in something like anguish. My baby. Oh, my little girl. Poppy froze. And then Cliff, loud and angry. You're trying to tell me there's nothing? Poppy couldn't feel her own breathing. Against her will, she moved back to the door. Dr. Loftus is an oncologist, an expert in this sort of cancer. She can explain it better than I can, Dr. Franklin was saying. Then a new voice came, the other doctor. At first, Poppy could only catch scattered phrases that didn't seem to mean anything. Adenocarcinoma, splenic venous occlusion, stage 3, medical jargon. Then Dr. Loftus said, to put it simply, the problem is that the tumor has spread. It's spread to the liver and the lymph nodes around the pancreas. That means it's unresectable. We can't operate. Cliff said, but the chemotherapy, we might try a combination of radiation and chemotherapy with something called 5-fluorouracil. We've had some results with that, but I won't mislead you. At best, it may improve her survival time by a few weeks. At this point, we're looking at palliative measures, a way to reduce her pain and improve the quality of the time she has left. Do you understand? Poppy could hear choking sobs from her mother, but she couldn't seem to move. She felt as if she were listening to some play on the radio, as if it had nothing to do with her. Dr. Franklin said, there are some research protocols right here in Southern California. They're experimenting with immunotherapy, cryogenic surgery. Again, we're talking about palliation rather than a cure. Damn it! Cliff's voice was explosive. You're talking about a little girl. How did it get to stage 3 without anybody noticing? This kid was dancing all night 2 days ago. Mr. Hilgard, I'm sorry. Dr. Loftus said so softly that Poppy could barely pick up the words. This kind of cancer is called a silent disease because there are very few symptoms until it's very far advanced. That's why the survival rate is so low. And I have to tell you that Poppy is the only second teenager I've seen with this kind of tumor. Dr. Franklin made an extremely acute diagnosis when he decided to send her in for testing. I should have known, Poppy's mother said in a thick voice. I should have made her come in sooner. I should have. There was a loud banging sound. Poppy looked around the door, forgetting to be inconspicuous. Her mother was hitting the formica table over and over. Cliff was trying to stop her. Poppy reeled back. Oh God. I've got to get out of here. I can't see this. I can't look at this. She turned and walked back down the hall. Her legs moved, just like always. Amazing that they still worked. And everything around her was just like always. The nursing station was still decorated for 4th of July. Her suitcase was still in the padded window seat in her room. The hardwood floor was still solid underneath of her. Everything was the same. But how could it be? How could the walls still be standing? How could the TV be blaring in the next room? I'm going to die, Poppy thought. Strangely enough, she didn't feel frightened. What she felt was vastly surprised. And the surprise kept coming over and over with the thought of being interrupted by those 4 words. It's my fault because I'm going to die. I didn't go to the doctor sooner. Cliff said, damn for me, I'm going to die. I didn't know he liked me enough to swear. Her mind was racing wildly. Something in me, she thought. I'm going to die. That's inside me. Like that alien in the movie. It's in me right now. Right now. She put her both hands to her stomach and then pulled up her t-shirt to stare at her abdomen. The skin was smooth, unblemished. She didn't feel any pain. But it's in there, and I'm going to die because of it. Die soon. I wonder how soon. I didn't hear them talking about that. I need James. Poppy reached for the phone with the feeling that her hand was detached from her body. She dialed, thinking, please be there. But this time, it didn't work. The phone rang and rang. When the answering machine came on, Poppy said, call me at the hospital. Then she hung up and stared at the plastic pitcher of ice water by her bedside. He'll get in later, she thought. And then he'll call me. I just have to hang on until then. She wasn't sure why she thought this, but suddenly it was her goal, to hang on until she could talk to James. She didn't need to think about anything until then. She just had to survive. When she talked to James, she could figure out how she was supposed to feel, what she was supposed to do now. There was a light knock at the door. Startled, Poppy looked up to see her mother and Cliff. For a moment, all she could focus was on their faces, which gave her the strange illusion that their faces were floating in midair. Her mother had red and swollen eyes. Cliff was pale, like a piece of crumpled white paper, his jaw looking stubbled and dark in contrast. Oh my God, are they going to tell me? They can't make me listen to it. Poppy had a wild impulse to run. She was on the verge of panic. But her mother said, Sweetie, some of your friends are here to see you. Phil called them this afternoon to let them know you were in the hospital, and they just arrived. James, Poppy thought, something springing free in her chest. But James wasn't part of the group that came crowding the doorway. It was mostly girls from school. It doesn't matter. He'll call later. I don't have to think now. As a matter of fact, it was impossible to think with so many visitors in the room, and that was good. It was incredible that Poppy could sit there and talk to them when part of her was farther away than Neptune. But she did talk, and that kept her brain turned off. None of them had any idea that something serious was wrong with her, not even Phil, who was at his brotherly best, very kind and considerate. They talked about ordinary things, about parties and rollerblading and music and books, things from Poppy's old life, which suddenly seemed to have been 100 years ago. Cliff talked too, nicer than he had been since the days when he was courting Poppy's mother. But when visitors finally left and Poppy's mother stayed, she touched Poppy every so often with hands that shook slightly. If I didn't know, I'd know, Poppy thought. She isn't acting like Mom at all. I think I'll stay here tonight, her mother said, not quite managing to sound offhand. The nurse said I can sleep on the window seat. It's really a couch for parents. I'm just trying to decide whether I should run back to the house and go get some things. Yeah, go, Poppy said. There's nothing else she could say and still pretend that she didn't know. Besides, her mom undoubtedly needed some time by herself, away from this. Just as she left, a nurse in flowered blouse and green scrubs came in to take Poppy's temperature and blood pressure. And then Poppy was alone. It was late. She could still hear the TV, but it was far away. The door was ajar, but the hallway outside was dim. A hush seemed to have fallen over the ward. She felt very alone, and the pain was gnawing deep inside her. Beneath the smooth skin of her abdomen, the tumor was making itself known. Worst of all, James hadn't called. How could he not call? Didn't he know she needed him? She wasn't sure how long she could go on not thinking about it. Maybe the best thing would be to try to sleep, get unconscious. Then she couldn't think. But as soon as she turned out the light and closed her eyes, phantoms swirled around her. Not images of pretty bald girls, skeletons, coffins, and worst of all, an endless dark. If I die, I won't be here. Will I be anywhere? Or will I just be not at all? It was the scariest thing she had ever imagined, not being. And she was definitely thinking about it now. She couldn't help it. She'd lost control. A galloping fear consumed her, made her shiver underneath the rough sheets and thin blankets. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to... Poppy. Her eyes flew open. For a second, she couldn't identify the black silhouette in the darkened room. She had a wild idea. It was death itself coming to get her. Then she said, James? I wasn't sure if you were asleep. Poppy reached out for the bedside button that turned on the light, but James said, No, leave it off. I had to sneak past the nurses, and I don't want them to throw me out. Poppy swallowed, and her hand clenched on the fold of a blanket. I'm glad you came. I thought you weren't going to come. What she really wanted was to throw herself into his arms and sob and scream. But she didn't. It wasn't just that she'd never done anything like that with him before. It was just something about him that stopped her. Something she couldn't put her finger on, but made her almost feel frightened. The way he was standing, the fact that she couldn't see his face. All she knew was that James suddenly seemed like a stranger. He turned and very slowly closed the heavy door. Darkness. Now, the only light that came in through the windows. Poppy felt curiously isolated from the rest of the hospital, from the rest of the world. And that should have been good, to be alone with James, protected from everything else. If only she weren't having this weird feeling of not recognizing him. You know the test results, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. My mom doesn't know I know, Poppy said. How could she be talking coherently when all she wanted to do was scream? I overheard the doctors tell her, James, I've got it. And it's bad. It's a bad kind of cancer. They said it's already spread. They said I'm going to... She couldn't get out the last word, even though it was shrieking through her mind. You're going to die, James said. He still seemed quiet and centered, detached. I've read up on it, James went on, walking over to the window and looking out. I know how bad it is. The article said there was a lot of pain. Serious pain. James! Poppy gasped. Sometimes they have to do surgery, just to try and stop the pain. But whatever they do, it won't save you. They can fill you full of chemicals and irradiate you, and you'll still die. Probably before the end of summer. James, it will be your last summer. James, for God's sake! It was almost a scream. Poppy was breathing in great shaking gulps, clinging to the blankets. Why are you doing this to me? He turned, and in one movement seized her wrist, his fingers closing over the plastic hospital bracelet. I want you to understand that they can't help you, he said, ragged and intense. Do you understand that? Yes, I understand, Poppy said. She could hear the mounting hysteria in her own voice. But is that what you came here to say? Do you want to kill me? His fingers tightened painfully. No, I want to save you. And then he let out a breath and repeated it more quietly, but with no less intensity. I want to save you, Poppy. Poppy spent a few moments just getting air in and out of her lungs. It was hard to do without dissolving into sobs. Well, you can't, she said at last. Nobody can. That's where you're wrong. Slowly, he released her wrist and gripped the bed rail instead. Poppy, there's something I've got to tell you. Something about me. James, Poppy could breathe now, but she didn't know what to say. As far as she could tell, James had gone crazy. In a way, if everything else hadn't been so awful, she might have been flattered. James had lost his consummate cool over her. He was upset enough about her situation to go completely non-linear. "You really do care," she said with a laugh that was half a sob. She put a hand on his where it rested on the bed rail. He laughed shortly in return. His hand flipped over to grasp hers roughly, and then he pulled away. "You have no idea," he said in a terse, strained voice. Looking out the window, he added, "You think you know everything about me, but you don't. There's something very important that you don't know." By now, Poppy just felt numb. She couldn't understand why James kept harping on herself when she was the one about to die. But she tried to conjure some sort of gentleness for him when she said, "You can tell me anything. You know that. But this is something you wouldn't believe. Not to mention, it's breaking the laws." "The laws?" "The laws. I go by different laws than you. Human laws don't mean much to us, but our own are supposed to be unbreakable." "James," Poppy said with blank terror. He really was losing his mind. "I don't know the right way to say it. I feel like somebody in a bad horror movie." He shrugged and said without turning, "I know how this sounds, but Poppy, I'm a vampire." Poppy sat still on the bed for a moment, and then she groped out wildly towards the bedside table. Her fingers closed on a stack of little crescent-shaped plastic basins, and she threw the whole stack at him. "You bastard!" she screamed, and reached for something else to throw. Chapter 5. James dodged as Poppy lobbed a paperback book at him. "Poppy, you jerk! You snake! How can you do this to me? You spoiled, selfish, immature..." "Shh! They're going to hear you. Let them. Here I am, and I've just found out that I'm going to die. And all you can think is playing a joke on me? A stupid, sick joke. I can't believe this. You think that's funny?" She ran out of breath to rave with. James, who had been making quieting motions with his hands, now gave up and looked at the door. "Here comes the nurse," he said. "Good. I'm going to ask her to throw you out," Poppy said. Her anger had collapsed, leaving her near tears. She had never felt so utterly betrayed and abandoned. "I hate you, you know," she said. The door opened. It was the nurse with the flowered blouse and green scrub pants. "Is anything the matter here?" she said, turning on the light. Then she saw James. "Now let's see. You don't look like family," she said. She was smiling, but her voice had the ring of authority about to be enforced. "He's not, and I want him out of here," Poppy said. The nurse fluffed up Poppy's pillows, put a gentle hand on her forehead. "Only family members are allowed to stay overnight," she said to James. Poppy stared at the TV and waited for James to go. He didn't. He walked around the bed to stand by the nurse, who looked up at him while she was continuing to straighten Poppy's blankets. Then her hand slowed down and stopped moving. Poppy glanced at her sideways in surprise. The nurse was just staring at James. Hands limp on the blanket, she gazed at him as if she were mesmerized. And then James was just staring back. With the light on, Poppy could see James' face. And again, she had that odd feeling of not recognizing him. He was very pale and almost stern-looking, as if he were doing something that required effort. His jaw was tight, and his eyes were the color of silver, real silver shining in the light. For some reason, Poppy thought of a starving panther. "So you see, there's nothing wrong here," James said to the nurse, as if continuing a conversation that they've been having. The nurse blinked once, and then looked around the room as if she'd just woken from a daze. No, everything's fine," she said. "Call me if..." She briefly looked distracted again, and then murmured, if you need anything." She walked out. Poppy watched her, forgetting to breathe. And then slowly, moving only her eyes, she looked at James. I know it's a cliche, James said, an overused demonstration of power, but it gets the job done. You set this up with her, Poppy said in a bare whisper. No. Or it's some kind of trick, psychic trick. The amazing what's-his-name. No, James said, and sat down on the orange plastic chair. Then I'm going crazy. For the first time that evening, Poppy wasn't thinking about her illness. She couldn't think properly about anything. Her mind was whirling, crashing, jumbling thing of confusion. She felt like Dorothy's house after it had been picked up by the tornado. You're not crazy. I probably did this the wrong way. I said I didn't know how to explain it. Look, I know how hard it is for you to believe. My people arrange it that way. They do everything they can to keep humans not believing. Their lives depend on it. James, I'm sorry, Poppy found that her hands were trembling. She shut her eyes. Maybe you'd better just... Poppy, look at me. I'm telling you the truth. I swear it. He stared at her face a moment, then let out a breath. Okay. I didn't want to have to do this, but... He stood, leaning closer to Poppy. She refused to flinch, but she could feel her eyes widening. Now look, he said, and his lips skinned back from his teeth. It was a simple action, but the effect was astonishing, transforming. In that instant, he changed from the pale but fairly ordinary James from a moment ago into something Poppy had never seen before. A different species of human being. His eyes flared silver, and his entire face took on a predatory look. But Poppy scarcely noticed that. She was staring at his teeth. Not teeth. Fangs. He had canines like a cat, elongated and curving, ending in a delicate, piercing point. They were nothing like the fake vampire fangs sold at novelty stores. They looked very strong, very sharp, and very real. Poppy screamed. James clapped a hand over her mouth. We don't want the nurse back in here. When he lifted his hand, Poppy said, Oh my God. Oh my God. All those times when you said I could have read your mind, James said, remember? And the times where I heard things you didn't hear and moved faster than you could move? Oh my God. It's true, Poppy. He picked up the orange chair and twisted one of the metal legs out of shape. He did it easily, gracefully. We're stronger than humans, he said. He twisted the leg back and put the chair down. We see better in the dark. We're built for hunting. Poppy finally managed to capture an entire thought. I don't care what you can do, she said shrilly. You can't be a vampire. I've known you since you were 5 years old, and you've gotten older every year, just like me. Explain that. Everything you know is wrong. When she just stared at him, he sighed again and said, everything you think you know about vampires, you picked it up from a book or TV, and it's all written by humans. I guarantee that. Nobody in the night world would break the code of secrecy. The night world? Where's the night world? It's not a place. It's like a secret society for vampires, witches, and werewolves. All the best people. And I'll explain about it later, James said grimly. For now, look, it's simple. I'm a vampire because my parents are vampires. I was born that way. We're the Lamia. All Poppy could think of was Mr. and Mrs. Rasmussen and their luxury ranch-style house and their gold Mercedes. Your parents? Lamia is just an old word for vampires. But for us, it means the ones born that way, James said, ignoring her. We're born and we age like humans, except we can stop aging whenever we want. We breathe, we walk around in the daylight, we can even eat regular food. Your parents, Poppy said again faintly. He looked at her. Yeah, my parents. Look, why do you think my mom does interior decorating? Not because they need the money. She meets a lot of people that way, and so does my dad.
as the society shrink. It only takes a few minutes alone with somebody and the human would never remember it afterward.
Poppy shifted uncomfortably. So you, drink people's blood, huh? Even after everything she's seen, she couldn't say it without half laughing. James looked at the laces of his Adidas.
Yes, sure do, he said softly, and then he looked up and he met her gaze directly. His eyes were pure silver.
Poppy leaned it back against the pile of pillows on her bed. Maybe it was easier to believe him because the unbelievable had already happened to her earlier today. Reality had already been turned upside down, so honestly, what did one more impossibility matter? I'm going to die, and my best friend is a blood-sucking monster, she thought. The argument was over, and she was out of energy. She and James just looked at each other in silence.
Okay, she said finally, and it meant everything she'd just realized. I didn't tell you this just to get off my chest, James said, his voice still muted. I said I could save you, remember?
Vaguely. Poppy blinked slowly and then said more sharply, Save me how?
His gaze shifted to empty air. The way you're thinking?
Jamie, I can't think anymore.
Gently, without looking at her, he put a hand on her shin under the blanket. He shook her legs slightly, a gesture of affection. Gonna turn you into a vampire, kid. Poppy put both of her fists up to her face and began to cry. Hey! He let go of her shin and put an awkward arm around her, pulling her to sit up. Don't do that. It's okay. It's better than the alternative.
You're freaking crazy.
Poppy sobbed. Once the tears had started, they flowed too easily, and she couldn't stop them. There was a comfort in crying and being held by James. He felt strong and reliable, and he smelled good.
You said you had to be born one, she added blurrily between the sobs.
No, I didn't. I said I was born one. There are plenty of the other kind around, made vampires. There would be more, but there's a law against just making any jerk off the street into one.
But I can't. I'm just what I am. I'm me. I can't be like that.
He put her gently away so he could look into her face. Then you're going to die. You won't have any other choice. I checked around, even asked a witch. There is nothing else in the night world to help you. What it comes down to is, do you want to live or not? Poppy's mind, which had been swamped in confusion again, suddenly fixed on this question. It was like a flashlight beam in a pitch-black room. Did she want to live? Oh, God, of course she did. Until today, she'd assumed it was her unconditional right to live. She hadn't been grateful for the privilege, but now she knew it wasn't something to be taken for granted. And she'd also knew it was something she'd fight for. Wake up, Poppy. This is a voice of reason calling. He says he can save your life. Wait a minute. I forgot to think, Poppy said tightly to James. Her tears had stopped. She pushed him away completely and stared fiercely at the white hospital blanket. Okay. Now get your head on straight, girl. You knew James had a secret, so you never imagined it was anything like this. So what? He's still James. He may be some god-awful undead fiend, but he still cares about you. And there's nobody else to help you. She found herself clutching at James' hand without looking at him. What's it like? She said through clenched teeth. Steady and matter-of-fact, he said. It's different. Not something I'd recommend if there was another choice, but it's okay. You'll be sick while your body is changing, but afterwards you'll never get any kind of disease again. You'll be strong and quick and immortal. I'd live forever? But would I be able to stop aging? She had a vision of herself as an immortal old crone. He grimaced. Poppy, you'd stop aging now. That's what happens to maid vampires. Essentially, you're dying as an immortal. You'll look dead and be unconscious for a while, and then you'll wake up. I see. Sort of like Juliet in the tomb, Poppy thought. And then she thought, oh God, Mom and Phil. There's another thing you should know, James was saying. A certain percentage of people don't make it. Don't make it? Through the change. People over 20 almost never do. They don't ever wake up. Their bodies can't adjust to the new form and they burn out. Teenagers usually live through it, but not always. Oddly enough, this was a comforting thought to Poppy. A qualified hope seemed more believable than an absolute one. To live, she would have to take a chance. She looked at James. How do you do it? The traditional way, he said with a ghost of a smile. Then gravely, we exchange blood. Oh great, Poppy thought. I was afraid of a simple shot. Now I'm going to have to get my blood drawn by fangs. She swallowed and blinked, staring at nothing. It's your choice, Poppy. It's up to you. There was a long pause, and then she said, I want to live, Jamie. He nodded. It'll mean going away from here. Leaving your parents. They can't know. Yeah, I was just realizing it. Sort of like getting a new identity from the FBI, huh? More than that. You'll be living in a new world, the night world. And it's a lonely world full of secrets. But you'll be walking around in it instead of lying in the ground. He squeezed her hand, and then he said very quietly and seriously, do you want to start now? All Poppy could think of to do was shut her eyes and brace herself the way she did for an injection. I'm ready, she said through stiff lips. James laughed again, and this time it was as if he couldn't help it. And then he folded the bed rail down and settled beside her. I'm used to people being hypnotized when I do this. It's weird to have you awake. Yeah, well, if I scream, you can hypnotize me, Poppy said, not opening her eyes. Relax, she told herself firmly. No matter how much it hurts, no matter how awful it is, you can deal with it. You have to. Your life depends on it. Her heart was thumping hard enough to shake her body. Right here, James said, touching her throat with a cool fingers, as if feeling for a pulse. Just do it, Poppy thought. Get it over with. She could feel the warmth as James leaned in close to her, taking her carefully by the shoulders. Every nerve ending in her skin was aware of him. Then she felt cool breath on her throat. And then quickly, before she could recoil, a double sting. Those fangs burying themselves in her flesh, making two little wounds so he'd drink her blood. Now, it's really going to hurt, Poppy thought. She couldn't brace herself anymore. Her life was in the hands of Hunter. She was a rabbit, trapped in the coils of a snake, a mouse under the claws of a cat. She didn't feel like just James' best friend. She felt like lunch. Poppy, what are you doing? Don't fight it. It hurts when you resist. James was speaking to her, but the warm mouth on her throat hadn't moved. The voice was in her head. I'm not resisting, Poppy thought. I'm just ready for it to hurt. That's all. There was a burning where his teeth pierced her. She waited for it to get worse, but it didn't. It changed. Oh, Poppy thought. The feeling of heat was actually pleasant, a sensation of release, of giving, and closeness. She and James were getting closer and closer, like two drops of water moving together until they merged. She could sense James' mind, his thoughts, and his feelings. His emotions flowed into her, through her. Tenderness, concern, caring. A cold black rage at the disease that was threatening her. Despair that there was no other way to help her. And longing to share with her, to make her happy. Yes, Poppy thought. A wave of sweetness made her dizzy. She found herself groping for James' hand. their fingers intertwining. James, she thought with wonder and joy, her communication with him a tentative caress. Poppy. She could feel his own surprise and delight. Poppy. She could feel his own surprise and delight, and all the time a dreamy pleasure was building, making Poppy shiver with his intensity. How could I have been so stupid, Poppy thought, to be afraid of this? It isn't terrible. It's right. She had never been so close to anybody. It was as if they were one being, together, not predator and prey, but partners in a dance. Poppy and James. She could touch his soul. Strangely enough, he was afraid of that. He could sense it. Poppy, don't. So many dark things I don't want you to see. Dark, yes, Poppy thought, but not dark and terrible. Dark and lonely. Such utter loneliness, a feeling of not belonging in either of the two worlds he knew, not belonging anywhere except. Suddenly, Poppy was seeing an image of herself. In his mind, she was fragile and graceful, an emerald-eyed spirit of the air, a sylph with a core of pure steel. I'm not really like that, she thought. I'm not tall and beautiful like Jacqueline or Michaela. The words she heard and answered didn't seem directed towards her. She had a feeling they were something James was thinking to himself, or remembering from some long-forgotten book. You don't love a girl because of beauty. You love her because she sings a song only you can understand. With the thought came a strong feeling of protectiveness. So this is how James felt about her. She knew at last. As if she were something precious, something to be protected at all cost. At all costs. No matter what happened to him. Poppy tried to follow the thought deeper into his mind, to find out what it meant. She got an impression of rules. No, laws. Poppy, it's bad manners to search somebody's mind when you're not invited. The words were tinged with desperation. Poppy pulled back mentally. She hadn't meant to pry. She just wanted to help. I know. James' thoughts came to her, and with a rush of warmth and gratitude, Poppy relaxed and simply enjoyed the feeling of oneness with him. I wish it could last forever, she thought, and just then it stopped. The warmth at her neck disappeared, and James pulled away, straightening. Poppy made a sound of protest and tried to drag him back. He wouldn't let her. No, there's something else we have to do, he whispered, but he didn't do anything else. He just held her, his lips against her forehead. Poppy felt peaceful and languid. You didn't tell me it would be like that, she said. I didn't know, James said simply. It never has been before. They sat together quietly, with James gently stroking her hair. So strange, Poppy thought. Everything is the same, but everything's different. It was as if she pulled herself up on the dry land after almost drowning in the ocean. The terror that had been pounding inside her all day was gone, and for the first time in her life, she felt completely safe. After another minute or so, James shook his head, rousing himself. What else do we have to do? Poppy asked. For an answer, James lifted his own wrist to his mouth and made a quick, jerking motion with his head, as if tearing a strip of cloth held to his teeth. When he lowered his wrist, Poppy saw blood. It was running in a little stream down his red arm, so red it almost didn't look real. Poppy gulped and shook her head. It's not that bad, and you have to do it. Without my blood in you, you won't become a vampire. When you die, you'll just die, like another human victim. And I want to live, Poppy thought. All right then. Shutting her eyes, she allowed James to guide her head to his wrist. It didn't taste like blood, or at least not like blood she tasted when she bit her tongue or put a cut finger in her mouth. It tasted strange, rich, and potent, like some magical elixir, Poppy thought dizzily. And once again, she felt the touch of James' mind. Intoxicated with the closeness, she kept drinking. That's right. You've got to take a lot, James told her. But his mental voice was weaker than it had been.
Instantly, Poppy felt a surge of alarm. "But what will it do to you?" "I'll be all right," James said aloud. "It's you I'm worried about. If you don't get enough, you'll be in danger." Well, he was the expert, and Poppy was happy to let the strange, heady potion keep flowing into her. She basked in the glow that seemed to be lighting her from the inside out. She felt so tranquil, so calm. And then, without warning, the calm was shattered. A voice broke into it, a voice full of harsh surprise.
"What are you doing?" the voice said, and Poppy looked up to see Philip in the doorway.
Dun, dun, dun. And I am leaving you guys on another cliffhanger. I am so sorry. It just seems to be a bad habit of mine. Next time, I will not be another 6-year hiatus. Life got life and got in my way. So what can I say? Again, special thanks to Eliza and Miranda. Those are not the full user names. I'm recording on my phone, so I can't go back and double check them. And it's also been quite a while. But I'll make sure to give you guys a comment or a tag. I'm not sure how YouTube works like that too well on the creator side. But I'll leave a comment letting you guys know that the next installment is here, since you guys have been so very patient. Hopefully I should be able to get another one before it's been another 6 years at the very least. I can't promise anything more than that. I'm unmedicated. But yeah, I hope you guys have a great time. Please let me know what you guys thought of the audio. Please let me know if there's any issues with hearing or comprehending. I know I don't have a 100% professional voice yet. I'm 100% just recording this off my phone, and it's ending at 2 or something in the morning. I'm going to choose to leave all this rambling in here because who else is going to complain? If you guys hate it, just skip to the end and just leave a like, comment, and say, I'm a god amongst mere mortals. Have fun. I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye. Poppy. She could feel his own surprise and delight.